is completely dry, so is the branch. What I've done here is we're going to work on the background, and I created a neutral tint and ultramarine blue. And I just added a darker blue in the corner here because that's the darkest area of the background. Now our background's a little different because I didn't add in all the different little branches, but I've got some in here. So I really like the depth that this is giving us. Now the next area is right next to the bird, but there is some softer areas in here, so I'm going to ignore where those softer gray areas are and just add water to where I want it to be darker. So we'll start there. Grab my water brush here. I'm using water with the blending and glazing medium to add this in. I'm starting upper left, working to the right, keep my hand out of it. So that's important to remember too. You don't want to get your hand in it. So I'm going to go around that area that is softer gray and just leave the gray that's there. Now I don't want this real wet. We're only going to do one coat since there's already a coat of paint on here. One coat of water. So I don't want this to be real soaking wet. First thing it does is it's going to lighten your color. And watercolors, as you know, lighten about 20% as you add the paint to the paper. It's going to always lighten at least 20%. So if you don't want to lose all your color, then don't add as much water. And you could even do this wet on dry if you wanted to. It certainly would be your choice. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the lighter of the two colors. And I'm going to try to do the same thing I did here. I'm going to put the paint in all the way through, and then I'll add in the darker down here. So I'm going to start up here, where it's going to be a little bit lighter. I like that second layer of values that we got by adding in that darker color. Again, the more values that you have, whether it be the background or the object that you're painting, the more realistic your painting's going to look. So keep that in mind even as you do your background. Now we've got the one layer of gray in there. It's kind of a blue-gray, which is perfect. So that gives us one layer of values right there. Take this right up to the bird's edge. Just trying to see where I went with that water so I know how far I can go without getting a harsh line. Okay, so I got the first layer in there. I'm going to pick up a little bit more water on my brush because it's starting to dry out, and just pick up the darker. I want it to be darker up in here by the branch in this corner, and then it kind of jumps over here, goes into this corner, and pick up a little bit more color. It was wetter there, so my color got lighter. So you keep an eye on that, which value you need. I really like this blue in there in the background. Just a little bit down in here. This could even come up just a little bit more, like that. Now we're going to let the water do its thing and blend that in for us. Clean my brush. I'm just going to soften this in because I don't want it to have a harsh line, just to be safe. Just never know where your water stops. There we go. That's better. Now, clean my brush again, and I'm going to lay down water for the next area. We're going to almost skip a little bit of a spot and go into the dark up in here. It's a little darker right there. There's a little bit of orange there, and you want to keep that. And then we're going to skip another spot. So it's going to be dark, skip a spot, and then dark. And then up in here, it's pretty dark. So let's put our water in first. This is going to look a little funny because we're skipping areas, but that's okay. We're going to go right up to this branch. Now our background again is not exactly like the photograph. Go down that far. And I'm going to pick up the light color first. I didn't create a lot of this color because I want to go a little bit at a time, and the more I have laid out there, and I can see I need to soften this edge over here a little bit because I don't want it to dry harsh like that. So you always want to keep an eye on the areas that you don't want to have a hard line. Easier to fix them now than it is to let it dry and then go back with an eradicator, because then sometimes it just doesn't look right. Okay, I'm gonna see where I've got my water. Looks like it's right in here. It's drying out already. It's crazy. Okay, now soften this edge away. And this edge, go catch that edge right away. Okay, we got some streaky looking over here, and that's exactly what I was looking for, so that looks great. Now over here we want to get this nice and dark, so I'm going to pick up my water. And I'm going to do where I want it darker first, where it's wet. I do have this area over here dark, so I'm going to pick up, or wet still, so I'm going to pick up my dark and put my dark in where I want it. I want a little bit over here, and then I want some just right where we had the water before. I'm just putting in the second value of dark, letting the water do its thing. These two areas there. Okay. Now, since this area that I just wet is a little darker, I'm going to put the dark areas in first so I can get those as dark as I want them. I want to separate these two branches here, so this area I definitely want to be darker, and I want this area to be darker. Just makes those branches stand out better. Alright, now I'm going to just pick up the lighter value. And put that in so the water can do its thing for that area. Now I'm going to just turn this a little bit so I can see about the glare of the light here. There we go, that's better. The blue, the darker blue is taking over. So to control that, I just pulled a little bit of the water out. See how we got the darker value in there and the darker value down here? That's absolutely perfect. So let's go ahead and continue. I'm going to continue down here so this doesn't dry harsh. Add some water. Now as we get into this area too, down in here, it is a little bit lighter, so we're going to skip this entire section over here. So we want that to stay fairly light. There's a little bit of a dark area here, and a little bit up the center, and close to the bird itself. But, and then down in here. But the majority of this is going to be lighter. So I'm just going to add some water up here too. This is a pretty dark section over here. But we're going to do it in a couple different values. I can do this area right away too. Now I don't want that to soften harsh, so I'm just going to soften it in all the way around wherever it might need it. That looks good. As long as you got a damp brush and your paper is still damp, you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the dark value first. This corner up here is pretty dark, so we're going to start there. My watercolor brush doesn't want to stay put. I'm going to come right up to this branch over here. And down here on this edge of the branch. Clean my brush. Add some water to the value of the background there so it's not all the same color. Now there's a branch in there that I kind of lost that's darker, so I'm just going to take some of the neutral tint and create that a little bit more here so we don't lose it. Again, the more depth and value and different things we can do, the better it's going to look. And we can even make that a little bit of a branch over here too, if we want. It doesn't have to be too distinct, because it's all going to soften into that background just like the other ones did that we put in there. I'm going to get rid of that edge there. That looks better. Soften some of this away. Don't want it to look too harsh here, too distinct. It's just a soft background that's behind him. That looks better. Okay, so we got this going. Soften that in a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more water down here, dry it out. And I'm using the wrong brush, so we'll use the watercolor brush like we're supposed to. Then it's just so much more gentle on your regular brushes. You're not wearing them out by adding all the water. He's pretty dark under here, so. Putting the dark down first. Do the same thing over here while it's still wet. Just reinforcing some of those branches that we had on there. You don't want to lose them. Just mixing up a little bit more paint. We need this just a little bit darker than the blue that we had. So I added a little bit more neutral tint to it. And you want to do that as you go. And what I like about this type of a background is it doesn't look solid, like sometimes you can do the solid backgrounds, and it just looks contrived. Where this is all different colors, all different everywhere, so when you mix your paints as you go, you've got different values, which is absolutely perfect for what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm just reinforcing some of these branches. Making sure you can see me here. There we go. I'm going to pick up the lighter value. Needs a little bit more water. It's too dark. There we go. It's better. Now again, this area is not all that dark. Right. Now this area right in here is fairly dark, so I'm going to just get that nice and wet. Softening these edges. Make sure they don't dry hard. Looks pretty good so far, I have to say. Just going back with clear water. Soften the edges away. Okay, so now I'm going to work down here. So I'm going to move this so you can see me a little bit better. So that's good. So there's a little corner down here that's really dark, and a little corner over here that's really dark. So we're going to get that area wet and work on that next. And then we skip a spot and we can come over here, and underneath the tail it's pretty dark. There we go. Now most of this area is going to be fairly dark, so we'll start with the dark areas. It might be the only color we add just because the water's going to pull it out and soften it in. Just creating more color as we go. I'm just moving around in the light so I can see how it's drying. It looks pretty good. Soften that edge. Okay, now right underneath his tail, it's pretty dark too. And then right up this edge is pretty dark, so we're going to get the whole area wet. We'll start up here and work down. Keep my hands out of it. Yep, that's adding a lot of depth to the background. Kind of giving it that muted look so it's not very distinct, which is, again, exactly what we want. And I'm skipping a couple spots underneath his tail so it doesn't all pick up that dark value too much. Want some of that lighter value to show through. It's pretty dark around him. Darken that section a little bit, because right around him it's pretty dark and you want that to show, because it makes him come forward. The darker it is behind him, the more he's going to come forward. Pick up a little bit of the lighter value, drop that in. And if it's darker in some spots, that's good too, because then it doesn't look so contrived. Feels pretty dry right there, so just added a little bit of water. Looks like you can see me, so that's a good thing. It's kind of a nice background, because if it looks a little streaky, that's okay. It looks like it's branches. So it's a little easier background to do. Now I'm going to just turn this a tad after I soften this edge away here. Always looking for edges that need to be softened. I'm going to turn this so I can take a good look at him from where he is. Upright. Now I'm pretty happy with the bird. And of course we're going to dry our background before we do any further details on the painting. But never hurts to look at it now, just to see where you might want to go. Do I need to have any highlights? Looks pretty good that way. This I think needs to be darker. But other than that, I'm truly happy with the feathering, and the glaze that we put on there really softened everything in together very nicely. I like the background now, the way we've done it here. Soften this edge a little bit here. But, so I'm going to dry it really well. See what a difference that makes, if anything pops out that needs to be added or subtracted or whatever we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I got everything nice and dry. Now I'm going to work on the tail feathers just a little bit. I just want to darken some of those areas. And I'm going to do this wet on dry. Reshape that one a little bit. This one is pretty distinct as well. And all I did was take our regular red color and added a little bit of ultramarine. And that's what created the color I'm using for the darker feathers here. And there are a lot of feathers in here. Tail feathers. Some go all the way up and some of them don't. I just thought that they needed a little bit darker in some areas. You want to really study your photograph. Very important. All right. I'm going to dry that real quickly. And then I'm going to show you a trick on the bird that we're going to finish him up and we'll be all done. So I'll be right back with you. this guy is done. I think he turned out fairly well. I'm pretty happy with him. Let me bring him up to the camera so you can see him a little bit better. We'll start at the top. See how that darker background really helped make him come forward? A little bit of detail in that branch didn't hurt either. With the white, and the white around his tail feathers really worked out well. I really like that dark background now too. Really makes him come forward. So I think we're doing pretty good. I'll see you at the next class. Don't forget to check me out at Patreon. And I am opening up an Etsy store where you can buy my classes one at a time if you would prefer to do that rather than Patreon. You can buy the completed design, and you can get a print of the design as well. So there'll be a lot of different choices on my Etsy store. So thank you so much. Have a great day.